All right, let's get into it. Let's look up the Satanic Panic, done by New York Times. I feel like this is going to be a boring video. I don't know. Let's not judge New York Times so quickly. This video
began as a cult phenomenon, then it caught on. Now a new game is sweeping the country.
You will burn forever and ever in eternal torment. You are no more.
The role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons debuted in 1974. It became...
You see the kids?
You will burn forever and ever in eternal torment. You are no more.
So this guy's a senior, right? And he went to
role-playing
the middle school classes. The guy's like, what?
Game Dungeons
They're like, you're done, dude. Get out. Permanently dead.
& Dragons debuted in 1974. It became a hit with many adolescents, but critics claimed it was an invitation to devil worship.
The witchcraft, the demonism, the spells.
And worse.
Do they know that we kill the demons? Do they know that? Were they aware that... Hey, that's what I don't understand. Like, we, like, all those things were our enemies. We were sent out on adventures to kill them. I get, like, being a wizard or being a witch or being, like, one of those other things. Maybe. But I wonder why people were so, like, worried about it. Just because they heard? Because they wanted to think something?
It is not fun and games.
The media set off a satanic panic.
A lot of adults who think it's been connected to a number of suicides and murders.
That connection has been largely debunked.
It's nothing but a witch hunt.
And the game has generated an unexpected legacy.
This was
I love that. I love that. I wanted to do that. I almost did something like this at my job. So I love that there's a bunch of kids here and they're playing D&D together. And I think Dungeons and Dragons can do a lot for kids. And I have dreams, I have plans. And some of those things that I think about is like what you can do in school, even if it's just clubs and stuff like that for D&D. I think that it can really have an impact on social lives and stuff like that. But I almost did something like this for my job at work. I worked at like one of the biggest bookstores in the nation. I think it's like the third largest or something like that. And they would always host events. And I brought up to them, I wrote like a two-page kind of like a thesis statement, kind of just saying like, how I should bring Dungeons and Dragons to the store, how I can open it up to kids, what importance it can do for kids, and why you should pay me to do it. And they were on board. They wanted to do it. And then I think some coworkers ended up wanting to play D&D, and I just ended up DMing for them instead. And I didn't want to drive an hour because my commute was an hour to work. I didn't want to drive an hour to work to teach people D&D like once a month. So I ended up not working, but I was serious about it, and they were like really intrigued. And I think I would have got the ground floor running. I think I should have just committed to it more, but I didn't.
Created an unexpected legacy.
This was a revolution.
Fact from fantasy.
On a summer day in August 1979, the family of a missing teenager called a Texas investigator named William Deere with some startling information.
Dallas Egbert had disappeared from Michigan State University during the summer session.
James Dallas Egbert III was a 16-year-old sophomore, and his family hired Deere to help find him.
He was a computer nerd, and he had a large amount of hair and carried his little briefcase. I wasn't sure that I was being told exactly what precipitated his disappearance, so I said, well, I guess the best thing we can do is I'll go to Michigan State University, and I'll find out for myself exactly what was going on.
Okay.
What he found when he went to Egbert's dorm room was a shelf of neatly stacked books. And something else.
There was a cork board with a series of tacks.
In what might look like a random pattern of thumbtacks, The investigator saw what he thought could be a clue. The shape resembled a building that was part of a network of underground campus steam tunnels, which students told him they sometimes explored.
We set out with maps, and we started going into the tunnels one
Yo,
morning.
this guy's legit. That's something you would see out of a movie or something. Like, that guy straight up saw the text and was like, and overlaid it. I didn't think investigators went that far.
Morning with press everywhere. I entered with the idea that I did not know what I was getting into.
But he had
There
a
he is
hunch
under the tunnels.
that it had something to do with a game that was growing in popularity.
This is a quest in a fantasy world of castles and dungeons, monsters and dragons. This world has become real to these people. It's all part of a game called Dungeons and Dragons.
Heck yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons, also known as D&D, was created by the late Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson in the early 1970s. It was born out of their love for military war games, and they devised scenarios with made-up characters that incorporated their interest in history and fantasy fiction.
See, that's what got me into Dungeons and Dragons as well. Like, I used to play when I was real, like, I think when I was around like 12, 13 years old, I played Warhammer. I played some Warhammer game. I don't know when it came out. There was I'll have to look it up when it came out, because like there was a Warhammer game that came out on PC. I played that. I got really into those simulators. Then I played Total War 2, and that got me into it. And then I played HeroClix and Star Wars Miniatures. So when I learned that I could play Dungeons and Dragons, and I could do the same like combat scenarios like in all those games, but then tell a story behind it, I was in. I was 100% in, because at the time I read a lot of books as a kid. And I used to role play. I used to do imaginary playing by myself to an age that I'm not comfortable with admitting it right at this moment.
Gygax said it provided an escape.
All of us at times feel a little inadequate in dealing with the modern world. It would feel much better if we knew that we were a superhero or a mighty wizard.
The game is played in a group,
That's what's
and the
great about
guide, or dungeon master,
You enter a very small room.
talks
Hold
the
on.
players
Are
through
these
the
real
fictional,
players?
sometimes violent adventures they will go on.
Sometimes
And each
violent.
has an elaborate scoring sheet for his character, with points for wisdom and strength and the like. A throw of these special dice decide the outcome of battles in an intricate scoring system. Decide the outcome
Dude,
of
okay, so I pull out this book a lot.
for his
Hold on.
character,
Where is it?
with points for wisdom and strength and the like. A throw of these special dice.
Look at this. They have a calculator out. I played freaking... this game right here. I know I pull this book out a lot, but this game right here was the first time where I actually really became like a dungeon master. And you needed a freaking calculator for this stupid game. There was percentages. It was ridiculous what like the amount of math you had to do just to calculate like certain points of health, or just basic things that we take for granted in 5th edition, which is why I appreciate 5th edition so much. But it's like I just opened to a random page, right? I opened to a random page and they're talking about like blaster fire. I want you to look at like a heavy laser cannon in this game is 6d10 times 2 minus square splash. And like to calculate some of these things was super easy, but then there's other things where they tell you to divide and they tell you to do, like, you literally had to know PEMDAS to play this game. And I don't next time a snotty-nosed kid is like, oh, when will I ever need this in my real life? I was like, you want to play Star Wars role-playing game?
Decide the outcome of battles in an intricate scoring system. Nothing
Very
is acted
intricate.
out. The real action is in the mind.
Now you guys are entering the castle.
But some, including Deer, worried that while the action was imaginary, some kids might take it too far.
You're leaving the world of reality into the world of fantasy. It advocated murder, decapitation. And I'm going, this isn't a healthy game. How can it be a healthy game?
Hold on. And I think people just want a scapegoat, right? Like, because right now it's video games. Right now, video games are the scapegoat. There's always, before video games, it was D&D. Before D&D, it was books. Back in the day, they didn't want kids reading books because they said that they took them out of reality. Or before that, it was TV, right? It was television, and then now then books. They didn't want kids reading books because it would do the same things that they're saying they're doing now. And so there's always a scapegoat for the issues at hand. It's always pointing the finger and never like looking at the mirror, right? Looking out the window. Like even recently, as horrible as it is, as horrible as, what happened in Uvalde, Texas, what's the first thing that, this Ted Cruz said was, he was like, oh yeah, video games help influence these situations. I think video games, and it's like, why are you pointing the issue to video games? What? Like, you see more violence on daytime television now than you do on video games.
That game, and Deer's hunch that Egbert was playing it in the tunnels, made great fodder for headlines, but it was a dead end.
Not that television
and Deer
does
went back
the
to
issue as
Texas
well.
empty-handed.
It
But you
wasn't
get what I'm
within a
saying.
day or two that the phone call came in. And I was told where I could find him, that he was still alive.
Okay.
So we flew out,
This kid
and I'm trying
found.
to remember his exact words, but he couldn't really say a lot. And I left it like that.
Egbert was a complicated teenager whose disappearance was never fully explained and who later committed suicide.
There was speculation
What?
he was the victim of a campus game called Dungeons and Dragons. But after a
So they're
month-long
linking-
nationwide search, he was found unharmed.
Deer fed into the growing suspicions about D&D in a book that pointed to the game as a culprit in Egbert's disappearance.
Oh my god.
But Tim Kask, who helped develop D&D with Gary Gygax, says Deer was just hyping the story for personal gain.
He was a publicity hound, and he knew that he could hang it on D&D and gather a lot of media frenzy,
That guy
and he
plays
did.
Dungeons and Dragons. You
Dallas
can tell.
Egbert is a tragic story. Brilliant young man, sent off to university at 15. It had nothing to do with D&D in the steam tunnels.
Still, that attention set off an unexpected chain of events.
Our stock took off, literally.
Wait, so
We
they didn't even
sold-
find anything in the steam tunnels. He went searching in the steam tunnels and it had no links whatsoever.
thousands of more copies within 90 days of all that stuff happening, and we were up in print runs. That's when we took off.
Sales nearly quadrupled the year after Egbert disappeared. As the cult game was going mainstream, Dungeons and Dragons generated interest in two conflicting groups, people who wanted to buy it and those who wanted to ban it. And televangelists
Of
took on a
course.
new crusade.
They are kids like yours, like the ones in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Kids who are turning to darkness because society has shut God out.
Oh, the crystals. The crystals.
Conservative fundamentalist Christian group would see a game that involved satanic figures, evil figures, that would be a source of concern.
Dungeons and Dragons has been called the most effective introduction to the occult.
The
in
most
the history of
effective
man.
introduction into
It
the
is
cult.
a fantasy role-playing.
Man, I've been doing it wrong, man. I've been introducing it into people into Dungeons and Dragons and not converting them into my cult. I could have been making so much money. I've been doing it all wrong this whole time.
Game that teaches demonology, witchcraft.
Gygax, a religious man himself, was put on the defensive.
Hold on. Demonology, witchcraft, voodoo, murder, rape. But you are, technically? Oh, I guess I am. You're right. I guess I am. I guess you guys do send me money to play Dungeons and Dragons. Never mind. And rape. You play Dungeons and Dragons, you're introducing yourself to all the... You know what's funny? Okay, so... The murder and rape is probably the two things that we...
The company hired psychologist Dr. Joyce Brothers to fend off criticism.
There is good and evil in life. And
Okay.
the way Dungeons and Dragons is set up is that good triumphs over evil.
Yeah,
Tim
that's what
Kask
I'm
says
saying.
that
That's what I'm saying. It's like the way D&D is set up is that you are supposed to be the good guy. You're supposed to be the champion. That literally in the books and stuff like that, that's how they tell you how they want you to play it. You could do an evil campaign, but that is the exception, never the rule. Most people go in there to be the hero. Even the guy earlier was like, it's nice to get away from reality and be a hero, especially in life when it feels like the cards are stacked up against you and you're always having to go uphill. You know, you got bills to pay. You got written up in your job because you're late. You're late to your job because your car's fan broke and now it overheats and you don't have the money to fix your car because your job doesn't pay you enough, but you need the job because it pays you just enough so you can eat and have a roof over your head. And now you're asking for rides to work. But you know what? Once a week, maybe twice a month, you get to meet up with some of your friends and you get to imagine beating up and slaying monsters and where everything goes your way, right? Like where everything just kind of works out for you. And if things don't work out with you, you know that you have people there that will always be there that can help you and bring you up. And it's good to relax and have those kinds of things. So yeah, it makes sense that most people, when they play D&D, they're going to want to be the heroes, or they're going to want to be the champions of the situation.
In private, he and Gygax couldn't believe the game was being linked to devil worship.
Hold on, what does this say?
Without sounding
What does that say?
disrespectful.
Gygax couldn't believe.
That says, Utah parents exercise devilish game. Herbert City, Utah, town of 5,000 early. Dungeon Master sees dungeon plan players take an imaginary journey. Complaints begin right away. Complaints about the program begin almost as soon as the game was started in Herbert City. Do with lust and the terminology of magic include a magic circle. These books are filled with things that are not fantasy but are actual in the real demon world. Mr. Springer said, and can be very dangerous for anyone involved in the game because it leaves them so open to satanic spirits. Oh my gosh, I need to keep my book closed, guys. I need to keep my book closed. Not because of me spilling water all over it like I did at the beginning of the stream, but because the satanic spirits can come out and possess me.
The game was being linked to devil worship.
Without sounding disrespectful at all, we laughed our butts off most of the time.
Oh, heck yeah.
Because it was like, are you kidding me?
Without sounding disrespectful? No, screw them, man. Screw them. Laugh at them, bro.
Really think we're teaching your children demonology?
Right.
But the controversy grew after the news media reported that a string of teen murders and suicides had one thing in common. The killers or victims were D&D players.
Mary Towie was killed by two friends, Ron Adcox and Darren Molitor.
What?
The crucial point is, can a game create psychosis? Or is someone like Darren Molitor an accident waiting to happen, with or without the game?
If you found 12 kids in murder-suicide with one connecting factor in each of them, wouldn't you question it? And that's all people would do.
I would certainly do it in a scientific manner, and this is as unscientific as you can get. It's nothing but a witch hunt.
But many grieving parents believed there was a connection. Pat Pulling's teenage son committed suicide, and she spoke publicly, claiming that his game playing contributed to his death.
These children not only begin to have violent dreams or violent thoughts or negative, depressing type things, they become very much a part of this character.
Young people commit suicide for a...
So, it makes you wonder, right? It makes you... Because D&D was probably played a lot differently, and things are a lot different than they are now, right? It really brings to mind what... Were they there at D&D because they were depressed, because they didn't really have any friends? And was it necessarily D&D that pushed them away, or the people there that pushed them away? You know, like, you ever sat at a table? Because we don't know. We don't know. There's not like, we don't see like a clear answer. It doesn't seem like anyone left any notes or anything like that, that they're talking about. But we don't, you know, when you play D&D, you ever play D&D with a group of people? Because I see this all the time. And someone does something, and then there's one or two people at the table that are like, you're an idiot. Why would you think about that? Why would you do that? Why are you doing this? Or there's one person at the table where something's about to come up and they try to tell you how to play the game. They're like, all right, everyone, this is kind of metagaming. I'm just saying, like, we shouldn't do it this way. And it's like, they're like projecting onto you, or they're not so much there to play the game. They're there to get you to play their game, even if they're not the DM. And I think it's real important for a DM, and I say this, and I know it sucks. Like, this is probably another reason why people don't like being DMs, is you are kind of like a mediator. You are kind of there to facilitate and make sure everyone's having fun. And whenever people, I've made a big point in the past where people have done that, where they've gone and said, "Oh, that's such a stupid idea. Why would you?" And I'd be like, "Hold on. Oh, you want to try and do something?" And I've also had people have to try to want to do some ridiculous things, and I've probably told them like, "Okay, that's crazy," but even then, it's like you can always try. There's always that chance. There's always that possibility of it happening. And even if someone wants to do something silly or outrageous, it shouldn't be looked down upon. And I think that can affect people's self-esteem. So I could definitely see that happening at these table settings. And it's not so much that D&D has pushed the kid to that point. It might just be like the social aspect has done that, and that there's just been, because there are toxic players. There's whole subreddits of people just telling stories of being toxic players or handling toxic players. It's kind of comes with the gig, you know. I think a lot of it is the social aspect of it, and to think that D&D influences or encourages people to do those violent acts is crazy, because people who are playing D&D are probably the least capable types of people to go out and do something violent.
A whole variety of reasons. In my research, I saw nothing that led anyone towards depression or suicide.
Northwestern University professor of sociology, Gary Allen Fine, wrote a book called Shared Fantasy.
They were probably already depressed when they got there.
And studied the D&D subculture.
They were the kind of kids and young people who didn't go to dances or date.
See? That's exactly what I said.
It was part of a nerd culture, I guess you would say.
I can still throw death spells, huh, Steve?
The D&D culture intrigued filmmakers and fiction writers. Rona Jaffe's book, Mazes and Monsters, was loosely based on what people thought had happened to Dallas Egbert. It was made into a movie starring a young Tom Hanks.
Let the journey begin. But which way do we go?
They went down the storm tunnels and got to play D&D in the tunnels. We had to like sit around a table. Like how awesome would it have been if it turned out that D&D was like what they did?
Cory Doctorow is a writer and activist who early on was profiled as an avid D&D player in this story from 1985.
The moral panic was mostly laughable. The idea that there were people who were fundamentalist Christians for whom Dungeons and Dragons represented some kind of existential threat to my soul was silly. You could go around and have really satisfying arguments with like profoundly ignorant grown-ups.
Over time, the Dungeons and Dragons controversy lost.
I love how all these D&D players, they're like, it was so funny. It was so funny watching these guys be idiots.
Steam. And today, the common thread between D&D players is less likely to include any reported links to violence, and more likely to involve Emmy Awards and literary prizes. Stephen Colbert and writers Ta-Nehisi Coates and Junot Diaz are among the millions of smart, bookish kids who played D&D and shrugged off any sense of panic.
People were bananas. My mom moral panicked. She was way more worried about us getting shanked, you know, or getting caught up in some nonsense.
It was a lot of fun. It also
play
provided
D&D,
them,
you must die.
A variety of other skills, leadership skills, negotiation skills.
We helped each other without even knowing it, man. I learned an enormous amount about what it meant to be courageous and what it meant to be passionate and the kind of hard moral choices that one needs to make in real life in this kind of fake, sort of imagined plane of action.
And what he said right there is so important, because that is so true. That is so true on so many levels. I've had so many players throughout the years that I've had to DM. And this is why I keep DMing. This is what motivates me to play this game all the time is I've had so many people just be like, when I first made this character, I put myself into the game. I put, this my backstory was my father, this character was me, and I didn't really know how to handle these, and like D&D or helped me handle my issues, help me tackle my personal issues. And I'm like, that is beautiful to hear. Like those are, even if you don't insert yourself into the game, what I love to do as a DM is I love to give players and put players in impossible situations. I love to have players in a moment where there's a no-win scenario and they have to come up with something creative to win. And I think that's super important. I think like everyone's creative in their own way. And I love seeing and hearing people just say like how important D&D is to them and how much it's helped them and how much it's affected them. And it's beautiful. I think it does way more good than bad.
For Diaz, as a young immigrant from the Dominican Republic, the game had special meaning.
This was a revolution. Being a bunch of kids of color in a society that tells us that we're nothing, being permitted under our own power to be heroic. To have.
I'm telling you, it's rough being a kid of color. You have nowadays it's a little easier. There's like, they're making TV shows and they're making stuff. But even when I was a kid, I specifically remember thinking, man, I love Spider. I must have been like 6 or 8. It was like 6, 7, or 8. I remember we were living in a trailer park, and I remember like just sitting, doing nothing. I think I was like playing Smash Brothers, but I was doing nothing, and I was just like, man, I like Spider-Man, but he's like, there's all these white superheroes, all these superheroes I watch on TV, and I used to have this like DVD cassette tape of old Superman, because I love Superman, and it's like I just wish that there would be something that I could play or that I could do where someone looked like me or someone. And I remember thinking to myself, well, there's Black Panther, but also thinking I know nothing about Black Panther. And also I remember also thinking like, I'm not African. I'm Black. I'm not African. My mom's from Haiti. And all these characters are from Africa. And I was like, I'm not, I can barely read it. So I was super, super happy when Miles Morales became a thing. But that's another reason why I play D&D. My players don't ask, but if my players did ask, just about everyone in my world that is like considered human is Black. Right? Like, and they don't, the cool thing about D&D is like, you honestly don't even look at colors. No one ever asks like, oh, is that human white, Mexican, or Black? No one ever asks that, right? They're probably imagining that they're white because we're so conditioned into imagining that everyone's white. But honestly, I picture my world, everyone's Black in my world. Everyone's Latino and stuff like that, it lets you create something that you don't see otherwise.
Agency to do the hero stuff, to take and be on adventures. There was nothing like it for us. It was very, 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 very impactful.
While some parents used to worry about what kids were playing, now they're more likely to be worried about how they're playing.
Cell phones and social media have revolutionized the way we live, but how has plugging in changed the way your kids are growing up?
Through the 20th century, you have this tension between free play and controlled media. I mean, that we were concerned about what sitting in darkened movie theaters would do to our children. Just wait 30 years, and they will be worried about what their children are doing. And it will no doubt be something different than sexting and bullying as we know it today. This is not a new phenomenon. It just changes with each new technology.
The American Academy of Pediatrics says that in this media-saturated age, it's important for kids to use their imaginations in free play. And in a twist, The role-playing games that set off a moral panic in the past may look more like a solution than a problem to today's parents.
It's a great thing to dream yourself in other places.
Those kids are enjoying it.
And it helps understand who you are. It's just nice to spend a lot of time thinking, imagining, in a group, collaborating.
Bobby is awesome.
Imagination is a good thing, man.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
Yeah. That was good. That was good.